Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Very interesting piece of basketball recruiting news. And again, we're not going to talk a ton of basketball going forward, but when there's big recruiting news this time of year, we got to hit on it. And there has been some major news with the University of Kentucky. So if you've been paying attention to the podcast feed to the YouTube channel, on Friday, Kentucky got a commitment from a kid named Malachi Moreno, 4-star center from the state of Kentucky, top 25 prospect in America, okay? I did a live reaction from vacation. We talked about it a little bit. And by the way, if you missed it, go back and watch it. We're not going to rehash it here, but it was kind of a very important commitment for Mark Pope. Local kid, you don't want to miss out on him. It would have been a bad look. It just would have been a bad look if you missed on him. But to Mark Pope's credit, comes in, gets the job done. He's being recruited by Indiana and some of the other big name schools, and Mark Pope gets it done. Why it's interesting, though, is because as soon as the commitment happened, a bunch of Kentucky fans hit me up in the YouTube chat and the YouTube comments, whatever. And they said, Torres, this is great, but tell us about Jasper Johnson. Is Jasper Johnson a 5-star guard originally from Kentucky who, oh, by the way, is supposed to commit this month? Is he going to end up a Wildcat as well? We love Malachi Moreno. By the way, Malachi Moreno was asked about Jasper Johnson at his announcement and said, oh, I got a list, and Jasper Johnson's at the top. But a ton of you have asked. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. And let me start by saying this. We did a Jasper Johnson update. I forget if it was a YouTube exclusive or if it was on the podcast as well, about 4 or 5 weeks ago when he cut his list. I think he cut his list early August, so maybe it was 3 weeks ago. And I said that I believe that Kentucky at that time was a distant third behind Alabama and North Carolina. Cut his list to 5. It was Alabama, North Carolina, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Louisville. Arkansas isn't recruiting him. I don't think Louisville has a shot. And at the time I said it's Alabama, UNC in one way or the other, and Kentucky in a distant third. But what I can tell you, Johnson, really good player. He's been a high-profile player in this 25 class forever. Started his career in the state of Kentucky. His father played football at Kentucky. His grandfather had ties to the University of Kentucky as well. So he's been a known commodity forever, and was really highly recruited by John Calipari when John Calipari was there. John Calipari leaves, and the recruitment starts to kind of slow down a little bit. Jasper Johnson, other schools emerged. They've had longer relationships. Mark Pope hasn't really gotten to know him. And that's where it was, like I said, as of a few weeks ago. By the way, should mention lefty, 6'4", really talented. 3-level scorer. He can get to the rim, can finish at the rim, good body control. Obviously, look, his dad played major college football. He's kind of strong, wiry strong. So every time I watch him, I like him. He could be a little bit ball dominant at times, but listen, you play with other good players, it's going to work itself out. And he's certainly going to play with other good players in college. Well, I bring it up because, as I said, when I left for vacation, we did this maybe the first week of August when he cut his list. It was late July, early August. And at the time, like I said, I thought Carolina and Alabama were in the lead. And the reasons why were pretty simple. Is one, I think it was really 2 or 3 things. First off, like I said, Bama and Carolina just had more time to build a relationship with the kid. Kid had a relationship with John Calipari. John Calipari leaves for Arkansas. Arkansas prioritizes different kids. That's okay. So Arkansas is off the list. And with Mark Pope, he's just kind of this new guy nobody really knows much about coming from the West Coast. Now, you know about him. I know about him. But I'm talking about a 5-star recruit who didn't even play high school in Kentucky last year, played at Link Academy in Missouri. And so I don't think he really knew much about him. Don't think he knew much about the offense, much about the system, much about whatever, and had a longer time to build the relationships with Alabama, with North Carolina, with some other schools. Beyond that, and this was a talking point certainly 2 or 3 weeks ago when I left, NIL was a factor. And I think Mark Pope kind of felt like, okay, I got a budget. I like this kid, but if some school is going to offer him some crazy number, am I going to blow my budget in August of 2024? He won't even get to campus until May of 2025. And I got 7 or 8 seniors on this roster that I'm going to have to replace. So if I spend all my NIL money here, how does it end up working out for the rest of the roster? I can't be tying up all of my money with one kid, and certainly a freshman, even if he's really good as a 5-star. And so I bring it up because when I left, that's kind of the vibes that I was getting. And like I said, I think Alabama, North Carolina felt good. Well, what I can say is over the last 2 or 3 weeks, it just feels like a lot has changed. Okay. First of all, a couple things stand out. One, I think the relationship has gotten stronger. Now, I know Jasper Johnson was away this particular weekend. He was out in Phoenix at one of the big events. But at the same time, I think the relationship has just gotten stronger. He spent some more time in Lexington over the summer. He was at that TBT event. He took a visit in June. I think he kind of got to really know the staff. But I think as importantly, not just Mark Pope, I think he's gotten to know some of the assistant coaches. Alvin Brooks is a great assistant coach, a great recruiter. Jason Hart is a great assistant coach, a great recruiter. And so I think from Jasper Johnson's point of view, I think he's certainly become more comfortable with that staff, more comfortable with that program. Again, grew up his entire life, quite literally, almost literally. John Calipari's the head coach. It's all he knew. Calipari leaves. He doesn't know what to think. Well, now he's familiar with that staff. He's familiar with what they're about. I think beyond that, and this is interesting, I think there's a little bit of internal state pressure on both sides. Like I said, Jasper Johnson, I know he doesn't live in Kentucky anymore, but I think he feels that if you want to call it pressure, I don't think pressure has to be a negative. I think it could be a positive of like, these people really want me. And I kind of understand that I can come here, kind of be one of the faces of a rebuild, a reload, and not, it's just different being a Kentucky kid. And I think he probably saw what happened with Reed Sheppard over the last year and the NIL opportunities and how you are adored if you are a Kentucky fan, if you're a Kentucky player in Kentucky. And by the way, you don't have to do it alone. Malachi Moreno's coming. You're going to have a couple guys that are already on the roster there. And so I just think he's become more comfortable with the situation. From Mark Pope's perspective, I think there's a couple things from his perspective as well. I think it's another one where he's felt a little bit of the quote-unquote pressure. And I don't think it's negative. That's not a shot at Kentucky fans. I think Kentucky fans have just made it clear. This is a kid that we really want, and this is a kid that we would love to cheer for at Rupp Arena running out of that tunnel. And I think from Mark Pope's perspective, I think a few things have been clarified. One, I think it's clear that they like him. I think he's probably understood this is kind of an important recruit. Like, I don't want to lose this kid because I didn't do everything that I could to get him. And so I think that relationship has kind of been expedited. And then I've also heard behind the scenes, maybe some of the NIL stuff got, I don't want to say straightened out, but it's in a better place, right? Where maybe 6 weeks ago, Mark Pope felt like I can't spend all this money on this one kid. And I think the Kentucky administration and the collective people have kind of let him know, like, dude, don't lose this kid over money. If it's over a couple, I hate to say it like this, but if it's over a couple $100,000, we'll figure it out at some point. But, whatever your budget was, if you need to go a little bit over, we can probably make an exception for this kid. His family has ties to the school. The kid has ties to the state. It makes just sense if we're going to overspend, if you will. Let's do it on a kid from the local area, 5-star kid, rather than somebody who's he's from Arizona or California or Minnesota or whatever. So it feels like it's changed. It feels like the NIL has changed. It feels like the pressure's ratcheted up in state. Malachi Moreno, again, publicly talking about it. And what I will also say, and this to me is where it's interesting, I've talked to some people at some of those other schools, and I think the attitude even from those other schools has changed as well, where it's like, I think there were a lot of people from the Alabama perspective. I think they really thought 2 weeks ago, again, 3 weeks ago, this is ours to lose. Well, sending out some texts to the Bama folks, to the North Carolina folks, to whatever. I think it's gone from he's ours to lose to kind of, instead of that, it's maybe we're not going to give up. We're not going down without a fight. But the confidence and excitement that was maybe there 4 or 5 weeks ago, I think there's a little trepidation that maybe this Mark Pope guy and his staff are making a move. So I don't think it's done yet. But the one thing I will say, I would keep an eye out on if Jasper Johnson sets a commitment date soon. As we're recording here Sunday night, it's about 7 o'clock Eastern time. I don't believe a commitment date has been set yet, but I just bring it up because this is a situation where he said he wanted to commit by the end of August. He said he wanted to commit by the end of his senior year. And I think the sooner he sets a commitment date, it's actually, I feel like, the better for Kentucky. If you had asked me a month ago, I would have said I would have worried, but it feels like all the momentum's with Kentucky. A lot of the schools that are recruiting him admit that they've lost some momentum. And so let's see if over the next 24, 48, 36 hours, whatever it is, he sets a commitment date. And then from there, we'll see what happens. Don't think it's done. Don't think it's 100%. I can tell you this time of year, sometimes a kid will silently commit. He'll want to wait till a visit, or he'll want to wait till something to announce his decision. I don't believe that we're there yet with Jasper Johnson. But if you had asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have said I think Bama's the favorite. I feel confident saying even if it's 51-49, 53-47, 55-45, I do think Kentucky is now in the lead. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if Mark Pope can close the deal. But a fascinating recruitment. And again, it comes on the heels. The Malachi Moreno stuff was fascinating to watch because everybody was excited, but everybody kind of thought, is this the tip of the iceberg? Is this the first domino? And I think bluntly, it just might be.